Good evening and welcome to Steel Sharpens Steel. I'm Tom Cunningham.
And I'm Chuck Hobbs.
And with us again, our delightful third wheel, Joyce Stevens. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here. Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday.
Oh, well, it's Friday. I don't know how happy it is. We've got a whole lot to talk about. Obviously, there has been a lot that's happened this week. First up on our roundup, the travesty of the Breonna Taylor handling in terms of Miss Justice. We had some mixed messages on the Breonna Taylor front, of course, the record $12 million settlement with the city of Louisville. And on the heels of that, Daniel Cameron, freshly married, offered an explanation that only one of the officers would face charges, and the charges he would face had nothing to do with Breonna Taylor per se. They were about the other persons in other apartments whose bullets penetrated once that officer started firing willy-nilly. So, Joy, you look like you're ready to jump in. This is about a woman who was most grievously murdered. Where do you stand on the Breonna Taylor travesty?
So one thing that you said that I found interesting, you said it was a record 12 million. Didn't the family of the white woman who was killed in Minnesota get 20 million, and the Somali cop got 12 years in prison for killing?
I should have qualified that. It was a record for Kentucky. It was not a record nationwide. It was a record settlement for Kentucky. And you are right. The officer who ended up shooting that woman from another country ended up facing severe jail time. And there was also a very large financial settlement. And we're going to touch on something that was just released today, which is, I think, critical. The 911 phone call of her boyfriend has been released. And Daniel Cameron, the AG for Kentucky, made a lot of saying that this wasn't a no-knock raid, the police announced themselves, et cetera, et cetera. But when you listen to the tape, and it is available for you all to go, I'm not going to play it here because it is heart-wrenching, but I do encourage you to go find it. You hear that this man says, "We don't know what's going on. Some people just kicked in the door and my girlfriend is shot." You don't hear any officers in the background saying, "Put your hand down, put that phone away, blah, 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 blah." You don't hear any of that. It's him talking to the 911 operator, and the operator is asking him questions, "Where are you?" And he gives the address, and one imagines that perhaps that would have propagated across the networks that, once the raid had happened, that this is an address that a raid was taking place, or she would know that units were on site because she would have information about the cars being at that location already, being able to pull up in the computer. But you don't hear any of that. And of course, this is in the aftermath of the shooting. And so it raises a number of questions, not the least of which is, where are these cops? It's almost like they came in, shot, realized the scenario wasn't what they were expecting, and just dipped. There's very little context. Joy, you're looking incredulous. Talk to me.
So that's got to be the only explanation. If you think about it, at what point in any other video we've ever seen where the cops are interacting with someone holding a gun, do they put their guns down and just wait for him to make a phone call? That's not how that works. Why would he have made a phone call if she wasn't already shot? So the sequence of events had to be people break down the door. He fires, they shoot back. She is shot and is bleeding out, and he calls 911. There had to be at least a minute. A full minute. If I was silent right now for a minute, you would see how long there really is. My estimation, and again, I don't have all the data, I don't have all the facts, whatever you want to say. My estimation, what I'm coming up with is they realized they had messed up, and they're sitting there trying to figure out how to get themselves out of trouble while he's making this phone call. If they even noticed that he was making that phone call at all. But they're doing damage control out front.
But and let's remember, there is a cop who allegedly was shot by one of the bullets from the boyfriend. Right. Now the only
sure of the forensics on that either.
Well, my point is this: when have you ever heard of a cop actually being shot and there wasn't all manner of crazy foolishness? Immediately, right. Officer down. an ambulance is dispatched within seconds. But
Right.
during the course of this minutes-long phone call, you don't hear any of that. There's no indication that anybody has been sent. There's no traffic that the 911 operator can hear that says ambulance dispatched to blah, blah, blah. Well, wait, that's the address I'm on the phone call with now. None of that. And seeing that there was one of our good friends, Clarence Tucker, shared an article about an officer who claimed he was shot and that his car was shot. Turns out he shot himself.
Right.
So it just calls into question a lot of the narrative that has gone on. And Daniel Cameron basically literally just lied, because there's no way to square this man making an impassioned phone call. And when you hear it, he's in tears. He's crying. He's screaming for his girlfriend. She's on the floor. The operator is asking him more than once, is she able to talk to you? Is she cognizant? Is she aware? And he's saying no. And then he starts screaming her name again. And finally, he just gives up and hangs up, because he's trying to do what he can to help his woman. And you don't hear any cops at all.
Because
You hear
outside,
nothing.
they're getting a story together outside. Now, I have never been in a shootout, but I have been in a group of people in my college days that were trying to figure out how we were going to spin our story for our RA,
Exactly.
for our dean, for our chemistry professor. Okay, so here's what happened. Here's what we're going to tell them. Okay, so the car broke down. That's what we're going to tell everybody. The car broke down. That's why we late. I've had to get my story together. And
Right.
I understand how you back up and you regroup. And that's the only plausible reason. In what world, in what universe in 2020 are cops going to have one of their boys in blue get shot and not do a full course press and not rush that room and arrest everybody? We've seen them handcuff dead bodies before. We've seen them handcuff people to stretchers, etc. No stretcher was called for anyone, right? So
and this was a warrant for drugs. So the presumption is that they're in a place of a bad man. This wasn't a no-knock warrant for a violation of an at-home daycare. This was supposedly some bad people, and a bad person shot you, and you end up fleeing the scene? Like, how exactly does that work? It doesn't make any sense. And not to jump on Daniel Cameron. Well, yes, exactly, to jump on Daniel Cameron. There were a lot of rumors going around. He married Mitch McConnell's niece. Some people say granddaughter, whatever. She's not related to McConnell at all. But it is interesting to me in terms of temperament. This young man is 34 years old, and he's already had a divorce and has married another woman. And that says something to me. He was married for a year, married at 32-ish. A year later, divorce, and then he picked up with this other person. And coming from the party of family values, it just strikes me. I mean, you must have to earn your stripes by divorcing your first wife or something in order to make it in that game, because with the exception of Ben Carson, it just seems like any person who is coming forward and being an avatar for goodness and sweetness and Jesus and the Lord just has a lot going on. Chuck, you have been silent, which is uncharacteristically a part of your persona. Why don't you weigh in on this for us?
No, I've handled more of these types of cases when I was still actively handling this stuff than I care to shake a stick at. And what I can tell you is that this raid was botched. I think we all know that. I think that the whole no-knock warrant issue has to be addressed both on a statewide level, but also nationally, depending on the next Congress, as well as whoever it is in the White House coming January. I find problematic the concept that the raid was botched from the standpoint that the boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who fired at law enforcement, was not the boyfriend that was the target of the so-called narcotics investigation. It has been my experience that, generally speaking, when these types of raids are happening, most law enforcement agencies, be it state level or even the feds, they are very careful, very meticulous in how they go about doing these types of actions. They provide surveillance. I was joking the other day with a friend of mine that, a lot of times, particularly with the feds, there are unmarked cars. It might be a Ford pickup. It might be a Jeep Cherokee. And that's the feds sitting right there on that house, eating their sandwich or their donut, and they're watching and they're watching and they're watching and they're waiting, and they don't generally go in until they know for sure that they've got the right intel, that they know that the person that's the target is there, and that they can go in and effectuate an arrest, or if not an arrest, have a good faith basis that the drugs and or the weapons that they are looking for will be on the premises. And that's not what you have here. And so
yeah, none of those things were found.
None of those things were found. And I also agree with both of you that I cannot think of any instance where there was an individual who fired at law enforcement in close quarters. Because again, we're not talking about out in some parking garage or parking lot or something, or even in a building, but close quarters. I can't think of any time that an officer gets shot and the shooter walks out in handcuffs, especially when the shooter is melanated like we are. That person usually comes out feet first. And so I agree with both of you that there's something that smells about this. When I watched Daniel Cameron speak the other day, you know, we all not only can listen and hear what someone is saying, but, you know, we're trained, all of us, to watch the affect of the individual who's talking. And I sensed all sorts of, those tears were not tears from the standpoint of, as a black man, that's not what was going on. I think he knew that he was selling a bill of goods to everybody that was listening across the globe. And I do believe that in time, it's going to come out that this was far worse than what we even realize right now, which is part of my lingering frustration, y'all, with the grand jury process and prosecutors. I just want to highlight that just real quick, is that essentially prosecutors have a right to charge law enforcement officers without ever going to a grand jury. A lot of people don't realize that. You sometimes see me write on my page that when a prosecutor does that, it's punting the football, which means like, oh, well, I took it to the grand jury and they considered it, and I did my duty, my civic duty, by taking it to the grand jury, and they have rejected charges against Officer Kickass. That's what you see more often than not, right? But the truth of the matter is this: no one can go into the grand jury proceedings. No defense attorney, no witnesses, no members of the media. It's all done in secret. And just like the old famous quip that you can indict a ham sandwich, you can get an indictment if that's what you want. It's a low threshold, probable cause. And that's all that we have ever asked for, is we want law enforcement officers who either recklessly kill someone, premeditatedly kill someone, or negligently kill someone to have to go through the same process that any one of us would if we screw up and accidentally shoot somebody, or recklessly shoot somebody, or intentionally shoot somebody. We would have to lawyer up. We would have to go before a judge and ask for a bond. We more than likely wouldn't get a bond, but still the process is all we're asking for. And that's why there is no such thing as equal justice under the law in these United States of America. No matter how good it sounds, it just is not true where Black people are concerned.
Now, I have a question that I want to pose to both of you. What do you make of the fact that the state attorney general is the person making this pronouncement? Obviously, the city of Louisville, and it's not Louisville or Louisville. I'm just letting you know. My daddy was born in Louisville. It's Louisville. The Louisville city made a settlement, a sizable settlement, as we have discussed. One imagines this is a city case. It was with city law enforcement. Why wouldn't the DA of Louisville tackle this? Do you have any opinion on that? Or is it just because Daniel Cameron, rising star, focus of the RNC, and blackface, was the person that they thought they might be able to appease Black folks with the watermelon slice holding tap dance that he chose to do?
Oftentimes what happens, y'all, I just want to jump back in, is you will find that in certain really botched situations that are white hot media in different states, you'll find that the state level law enforcement agency may take over the investigation from the local law enforcement investigative body. In this particular instance, I have seen this happen in Florida too, where there is an officer involved shooting because of the fact that usually the local district attorney and or state's attorney is chummy with whoever the police chief is, whoever the sheriff is, and what have you. You will usually see the state here in Florida, it's the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE. They will usually take over those type of officer involved type shootings. And then from there, the person who would issue the findings would either be the commissioner of the FDLE, or it could be the Florida State Attorney General as well, saying that we've looked at this and we've made a decision based upon an officer involved shooting.
All right, Joy, it looked like you wanted to jump in. I want to give you a chance before we move on to some other topics. What say you?
So my observation as a non-legal person is that it was a great chance to confuse the optics. You know, if it had been a white AG, then it would have inflamed even more the sentiment of this. This is, you know, this is another example of systemic racism. It's another example of Black people not getting a fair shot. But you trot out this Black man, and all of a sudden questions are being answered, are being asked. Like, well, you know, is he down for the cause? Did he do everything he's doing? There was even a moment where when we found out, and I say we as, you know, Black Americans who were paying attention from other places at a distance, when you saw a Black AG, there was an assumption made, well, maybe there'll be justice. Maybe he's going to handle it. And so it keeps things quiet for a little while. So putting him as the face of this was, in my opinion, was an effort to try to mollify folks that would otherwise have started an uprising much earlier. You know, well, let's send him out, and they'll think that everything's okay, and then in the background we can be doing what we want to do and get all this stuff to happen.
Well,
later.
it certainly was an odd choice to put up concrete barricades, basically lock down the entire city central. If you thought that was going to work, I guess by the time that probably was a part of their thinking, but weeks and months later, it was pretty clear that wasn't nobody believing that that was the way it was going to go down.
Right. So all of a sudden, he's not bringing any charges. Things are just languishing for a while. Then he gets engaged, and those pictures make the news. Then all of a sudden, everybody's kind of looking at him a little side eye. Then he gets married this past weekend.
Well, it was before. The pictures just came out, but he was actually married in August. It was supposed to be December. So why he chose to move his wedding up in the middle of his responsibilities in investigating the most serious and hotly debated, racially charged case in his career, short career, is incredulous to me.
Yeah. That's another thing, is the length of time that he has been in office or been a civil servant is extremely short. And there are allegations or rumors going around that he's not even qualified to be doing what he's doing. Like, he's like no real trial time, been fast tracked through the system, protege to Mitch McConnell for a reason. Like, there's a lot going. And then back to Chuck's point about a botched operation. There is the other possibility or a likelihood that this was botched from head to toe. It wasn't just a few cops that went in and made a mistake. You got breakdowns in communication, breakdowns in systems, protocol, procedure, everything else. It makes that entire department look like a bunch of stooges. And so it could be a lot more than just covering for what happened in the moment. It could be covering for an entire system that's broken. You see what I mean?
Well, I know, to close us out, I posted on my page, if he had stolen $12 million worth of wontons, that would have been a felony, a class A felony, and he would be getting more jail time than wanton endangerment. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we are. It's absolutely ridiculous when the city says, we realize this was horrible, it was a mistake, and we're going to write a check for $12 million. And yet, that one police officer was fired, okay, fine, but no substantive charges against any of the officers involved. And you have this one clown posting on social media his open letter to his comrades for how they are being unjustly treated. There was one person who was unjustly treated, and she is no longer with us, and her name is Breonna Taylor. Moving on to our next segment. It is of no surprise to anyone that Mitch McConnell was going to squeeze every erg of power at his disposal to run the tables on the Supreme Court pick. Hypocrisy is not even a word that appears in the GOP dictionary. It is the GOP dictionary. And so it is of no surprise that they are pushing it through. There were some momentary flashes that the vote might be delayed if they were able to peel off 4 votes. We got Susan Collins weighing in almost immediately, Lisa Murkowski immediately after, and then, like dominoes, Mitt Romney voted yes, Cory Gardner voted yes, and McSally voted that they would not impede anything. So basically, it would take Chuck Grassley and somebody else with a moral conscience to block anything. And it doesn't look like that is going to happen. And in fact, Trump has named the person he intends to nominate, and that is Amy Coney Barrett, a right-wing darling, a staunch Catholic with very strong opinions about abortion, a mother of 7, including 2 adopted kids, and about as conservative a woman as you could possibly place right now. Since she was confirmed under Trump, she's already gone through the Senate bailiwick, although I dare say there are going to be some Democrats who may have supported her for her federal seat that would not support her here. But the point is pretty much moot. Chuck, what do you feel about Amy Coney Barrett and what we are looking forward to over the next week or so as this nomination is literally sprinted through the proceedings?
It will be sprinted through. One of the things that I thought was interesting the other day, Tom, is that Rush Limbaugh made a comment that he hoped that they would just bypass even any committee meetings about this and just go straight to a floor vote. Now, I have not seen Mitch McConnell indicate that he would do that, but it is pretty clear that they are going to try to push this as fast as possible. Generally speaking, from nomination to confirmation usually takes about 70 some odd days. We now have fewer than 39 days left until election day here. And so, again, part of the concern is with a 4-4 split, or with 8 justices. We can't say a 4-4 split, but with 8 justices, the concern is if there is a tie, or if there are lingering election issues like Bush v. Gore in 2000, you definitely would want a 9-member court to be able to make a decision. But we all are not fooled. We recognize that Amy Coney Barrett will more than likely get confirmed. Last week when Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, like Tom, you just said, there was some speculation that perhaps some of the Republicans will hold out, but that has been ended now. And so I'm pretty certain that she will be confirmed. She will not be confirmed like used to be when we were kids. Ginsburg 96, well, I think it was 96-3 was her split, or those old days of 100-0. That's not going to happen anymore. But I do believe that she will be confirmed and she will be seated. And I'm not mad, interestingly enough, at Republicans or the president about this. He's the president. He won the election. He's supposed to nominate. They're supposed to advise and consent. My anger, as I wrote last week, is with all of the Democrats who decided as if it's her emails. I just don't like her. There's something about her that just rubs me wrong. Those are the ones that I'm upset about, because Hillary Clinton said 5 years ago, and we said, I know, Tom, you said it, I said it, Joy, I'm quite sure you were saying it on your page, that anywhere from 3 to 4 Supreme Court justices could be picked. We're at 2. We're getting ready to have number 3. So I'm not mad at Republicans doing what Republicans are supposed to do. The president should nominate. They should confirm, and it should burn us. And when I say burn us, it should be something that we should never forget as a group of Democrats or progressives, that this is what happens when we can't coalesce behind a candidate, whether you like him or her or not. Coalesce, go along with it, because it's your permanent interests that are more important than your personal predilections for the individual.
Yeah, there was an interesting post. I'm going to get to you, Joy, because I see that you want to jump in. I saw a meme that said, the marginalized don't have the luxury of your personal private convictions when it comes to election time. And to be clear, we're not talking about a single election. It wasn't just 2016 where Clinton did not win. It was 2010 when you turned over control of the Senate to Mitch McConnell. It was 2012 when you did not do what you could have done then. It was 2014 when you did not do what you could have done then. It has been too long, far too long, that we have allowed malaise or apathy or disinterest or whatever to control the emotions of our voting bloc and split that power. And, no condolences to Ms. Jill Stein, who split that progressive quasi vote, whatever, and turned over Michigan and Wisconsin to Donald Trump. But we do have to be better than this. I was talking to someone today who was saying, Biden needs to create some excitement. I appreciate the desire for excitement, But the GOP doesn't care about excitement. The GOP cares about power, and they are doing whatever they can to utilize the power while they have it. One of the reasons that they are so desperate to get this confirmation in is that there are legitimate fears that they are going to lose the Senate. And one of the scenarios, which I guess is still possible just because the wheels of government turn as they do, is that the confirmation procedures take place, but the clock runs down before they can actually get the vote. And then November 3rd happens. And within that week, we see that there's a Biden presidency. And whether or not, I mean, wish fulfillment, but whether or not anybody would reconsider and say, we were repudiated and we were strongly repudiated. And it is possible that part of our losses are predicated on the fact that we pulled this fast one. Where do you guys weigh in on the possibility of other scenarios that do not include instantaneous confirmation? Let's start with you, Joy.
You know, you make a good point. I think, first of all, I think one of the reasons that you saw questions around what Romney was going to do, what Murkowski was going to do, was they were trying to see how it played in the press. Did they get any support? Well, did they get any letters, emails, phone calls, etc., from their own constituency saying, I'm so proud of you, this is what I want you to do? And I think that they did not get that and decided to roll it on back. Well, this isn't going to help me. It's not politically expedient. There's no point in me betraying my party and all of the vitriol that comes along with that. Let me just toe this line because I don't get enough support from the other side or from the middle. I think going forward, if there is no if they don't get their person in before November 3rd, I think there's going to be, first of all, November 3rd is going to be a bloodbath no matter what you do. No matter where you go, no matter who you are, please listen to me when I tell you that November 3rd is going to be a problem in America. I am not speaking in hyperbole. I am not trying to be a fearmonger. I'm telling you, stay in the house. It's going to be bad because no matter who wins, either your guy wins and the other side is angry and wants to battle and fight, and there's fights in the street, and whoever's in charge of the military puts it down, or your guy loses and you're angry and you take to the streets and you're fighting the people whose guy won, and there's still going to be military people putting revolutions and insurrections down. It's going to be bad. And so in the middle of all of this, you have what, if there's no decision before that, you have potentially either 5-3 or 4-4 Supreme Court, and they could make the same type of decision without taking into effect all of the ramifications of what they're doing and stick to, you know, the letter of the law without looking at the intent and make a decision that throws this whole country into chaos. Or they could fail to make a decision. Either way, chaos is coming. And I really want people to understand that, like, this is not going to be your normal election. We've heard Joe Biden say we're in a fight for the soul of our democracy. That is not hyperbole. It is just as serious. Every election is supposed to be the most important one, but this one is different. This one is not for play. We've got to quit pretending. You know, you talk about the Stein voters, the protest voters, the abstention voters, etc. Get off the bench because it's all in right now. You've got to make a decision. And this is a two-party decision. Anything that is throwaway vote, write-in vote, you write Kanye's name in there or something stupid like that, you are a part of the problem. You're not helping the situation. Somebody mentioned before, like, progress in politics is like getting on the bus. It may not take you directly to your destination. Ride the bus that takes you the closest to where you want to go. You know, don't just sit at home going nowhere. Don't get on the bus going the wrong way because you're mad the other bus doesn't go to your stop. Get as close as you can and then get off and get on the next bus that takes you as close as you can. We got to stop sitting on the bench waiting on perfection because Obama can't run again. We got to get over that too.
I saw your grandmother mentally picking a switch when you mentioned writing Kanye's name on that ballot. Your teeth gritted, and I felt your grandmama pulling up inside your spirit to share her essence with you. Last point on this: any of you all feel that there's a chance at all that Amy Coney Barrett would recuse herself from deliberations on the election as other justices? I know, I'm just kidding. I thought I might as well throw it out there for giggles. Speaking about that peaceful transition of power, Joy, you kind of dovetailed right into it. President Trump has literally questioned whether or not he would transfer power peacefully after the election. Now, he did get some blowback on the GOP, most forcefully from a GOP governor who basically was like, come on, Sam. Like, what are you saying? And then Lil Lindsay, picked himself up off the fainting couch and crawled over to a TV to say that, it's going to work. Everything's going to be okay. We're going to transition power just as we always have. And even Mitch McConnell kind of somewhat mollified the president and saying, don't go there. You don't need to go there. It will be interesting to see if this does drag on. And if he decides to pull stunts. He literally said, I need her in there in case something goes down with the election. And saying the quiet part out loud is not something that is foreign at all to Donald Trump, but it will probably give some voters pause. And the more voters it gives pause to, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Moving on to other petty tyrants who are annoying to me. We have Ron DeSantis in Florida with a triple threat of foolishness concerning a bunch of different topics. First up, Mike Bloomberg famously has paid $100 million to settle. No, wait, hold on.
32 million for 1,600 people, right?
No, it's another number. He paid a lot of money for 32,000 formerly incarcerated people to get their voting rights back.
Right.
So that's a big number. It is especially pressing to Ron DeSantis in that the margin of deciding victory in the 2018 gubernatorial election was 32,430 odd people. So basically, Mike Bloomberg's like, I'm gonna let these people vote that you tried not to get to vote, and it could swing the election of the entire state. So that was number one. The AG of Florida is now directing people to investigate the legality of Mike Bloomberg paying these fines. Now, you didn't say anything about that when you passed that BS law to force them to pay the fines in order to get re-enfranchised. You just said the fines had to be paid. The fines have been paid. What you got to say about it? Mm-hmm. Chuck, you are in Florida law courtrooms a lot. What do you think about these specious investigations so close to the election?
Yeah, definitely partisan politics run amok. Problematic from the standpoint that, and not surprising, Republicans want to win at all costs. I have spent enough time around enough of them through the years here in Florida to know that if there is something that they can do that is quote unquote within the law to suppress voting power in any way, shape, or form, they will. Outside of the 4 years that we had Charlie Crist as governor from 2006 to 2010, when he automatically restored civil rights for former felons by executive order. At that time, I was general counsel for the Florida NAACP, and I was there at the signing ceremony for that. And what's interesting, a lot of people might not realize this, is that when he left office in 2010 to run against Marco Rubio, when he left office and Rick Scott became our governor, the very first executive order that Rick Scott signed on his very first day in office was rescinding Governor Crist's automatic restoration of rights for former felons. So that tells you all that you need to know, that Republicans understand that there are a number of Black and Latino, white too, but definitely a number of Black and Latino voters here in the state of Florida who are disenfranchised for myriad reasons. And so the concern is, if we can do anything to keep those ones from being able to exercise their rights to vote, let's do it. You also see shenanigans down here in Florida with regards to early voting hours. Governor Crist was a champion when he's a Republican, and let's just say it, former Governor Crist is a Democrat now. Yeah. And, but when he was a Republican, he extended early voting hours out for 2 full weeks. And every time now you see that diminished more and more. They want to do anything that they can do to keep the numbers down. And so with that in mind, I was not shocked when Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody said she's launching the investigation into Mike Bloomberg. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But Tom, I'm not going to lie. What pissed me off even more with Governor DeSantis today was he now has moved us to stage 3 on reopening Florida, even though the coronavirus is still a very serious threat. The numbers just came out yesterday that UF has almost 1,000 people, students as well as faculty, that have the disease. FSU has almost 2,000 people with the disease. And yet here he is saying, no, let's just go back full bore, go to the restaurants, go to the movie theaters, do whatever it is you want, because he wants to open the economy. And yet I often wonder whether there's something a little more insidious there, which is sick people can't go to the polls. And we all know that voter turnout, if it's less, actually inures a benefit for Republicans as opposed to Democrats, because still here in Florida, there are more numerically, there are more registered Democrats in Florida than there are Republicans. So they want to, and we know this disease is hitting who? Black people and Latinos the most. And so I put a post up today where I was specifically talking to Black people. And one of my good friends from childhood, who's white, was like, Chuck, what about white people? Some of us don't want to catch the disease either. I'm like, no, I feel that. And I don't want my white brothers and sisters to get it either. But I'm talking about my people. And I know that personally, I know people who have died that are kin to me. We all have. Everybody knows someone who is in the box now because of coronavirus. And so with that in mind, I'm like, don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. Stay out those restaurants, keep your mask on, continue to social distance in as much as you can so that we can get there to the finish line on November 3rd.
So, Joy, I know you want to jump in. Florida is also a demographically old state, which could cut the other way for the Republicans. What are your comments on DeSantis on either the issue of opening the state or Bloomberg? And we have one more topic to cover on DeSantis's shenanigans.
You know, you make a good point about the average age in Florida, because it is a retirement state for the most part. And I do think that and I also know just from my time in Florida that there are a lot of people who are gaining Social Security, on Medicare, on Medicaid, that are 65, 68, 75, whatever, and they are planning to vote Democrat, even if that's not how they usually vote, because they see what's happening. Another demographic that we may be missing with this whole idea of opening Florida back up for everything is the young vote, the college age kids, the 22 and 25-year-olds, because they do want to go out. They do have that sense of invincibility. And what if, hypothetically, the day you go to vote, they're taking temperatures. And if your temperature is too high, even though you're asymptomatic, you can't come in here and you cannot exercise your right to vote because you've been out at the frat party a week ago. That is a possibility. They're already saying stuff like, you can't go into the store, you can't go into this building, this doctor's office, whatever. If your temperature is high, even if you're asymptomatic, that could be a possibility to deny people the right to vote the day of. It's too late to get an absentee ballot. You can't come back tomorrow. So what do? I mean, again, I'm just spitballing ideas of how this could all play out.
Well, I'm just here to say, all of you young Floridian college students who are anxious to vote and party, go on ahead and do your early voting, get your absentee ballot, and then go get lit. Because that way you got your full litness that you're getting taken care of, but you're also getting your civic duty taken care of. And that's the thing that we are most concerned about. And while we're on the topic of young people and the things that young people do, Rick DeSantis came out with his fascist proposal that people who protest would be potentially incarcerated, thereby denying them the right to vote as well. DeSantis is almost a movie puppet dictator villain at this point. I scarcely believe he's not twirling his mustache behind waiting to get powdered for his various media appearances. He is a clown. And it is surprising that Jacksonville having to shut down and deny the RNC their opportunity for their in-person ballyhoo, that DeSantis isn't facing more ire, but he's such an empty suit that were Trump to direct any sort of attention to him, he'd probably blow away anyway. So I don't know that there's very much to gain from kicking a person who is as shallow as he is. Moving on to a couple of other topics that hopped up today. President Trump, in a pitch to the blacks, is offering a $500 billion package of shiny things, while also claiming that he is going to name the KKK and Antifa, such as Antifa is, since it's hardly an organized group, as terrorist organizations. Now, it strikes me as interesting that he would propose claiming that the KKK is a terrorist organization when he would undoubtedly, by definition, have to lose the support of many cops. But what do you all think about this latest entree coming into the home stretch Are Black people going to go for it? He certainly hasn't approved those additional $1,200 checks that I thought people were going to be receiving with his name on them again. What do you think about this latest gambit of offerings of tokens to his African Americans? Joy?
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a box of shiny things, and I think that there are some people that are going to fall for that. We already are hearing it. You're already hearing not just the stereotypical uneducated Trump supporter. You're hearing degreed people that you would assume would be able to empathize with the plight of the average American who's living hand to mouth, check to check, etc. And you're hearing them say Trump has done more for Black people than anybody since Lincoln, and they believe it with all their heart. You're hearing people say things like, what did Obama ever do? And, Biden had 40 years to do something. He did nothing. Never mind that Biden was never president. It's a whole different thing. That's specious reasoning at its best. But that is going to appeal to the group that he's already managed to romance and potentially grab a few more. And he doesn't need a lot. We talk about every vote counts, but we also know that the Electoral College is extremely powerful. And that is how the presidency is decided. If he can pick up just a few more people in key states to swing those votes and those Electoral College votes his way, then we're doomed. And this could do it. As much as I hate to say it, what he is offering is empty and enticing. You're
muted.
You have any weigh in on that, Chuck?
Here's what it comes down to. General William Tecumseh Sherman said in Field Order 10 that Black people will get 40 acres and a mule. That was in 1864. 156 years later, we're still waiting on the 40 acres and the mule. So you can make promises all that you want, but can that be delivered? And I don't believe so. And when I say I don't believe so, I base that on the fact that, like Joy said, I do agree that it was a shrewd campaign type promise targeted to certain individuals, particularly those who are already with the narrative, those Democrats, particularly those Black males, some Black women, but mostly Black males who have issues with Kamala Harris. We've talked about that a lot over the last 6 weeks. Is she Black? Is she not Black? Joe Biden, he was for the crime bill. The ones who make those arguments on social media. I think that was, like Joy said, an ability to try to even siphon off maybe a few thousand more here or there to try to maybe tip the balance in certain areas. So I kind of saw it that way. But at the end of the day, let's say he's not being disingenuous. Let's say President Trump is interested in a $500 million type initiative targeted toward the Black community.
And Juneteenth is a federal holiday.
And Juneteenth is a federal holiday.
Let's not forget that.
Right. The problem is this is the same president and many of his followers who, over the course of the last month since the Republican convention, have talked about the fact that the 1619 project that the New York Times published last year, talking about slavery, talking about its role in the formation of these United States of America. There are a number of our white brothers and sisters who don't believe any of that. They are poorly educated, and not only are they poorly educated, they have no interest in learning about the compromises or how this country grew based upon slavery and the slave economy. They don't want to hear that. They want to only hear good things, happy things about the slave owning presidents. They don't care about any of that. And so with that in mind, the president, even if this is something that he really wants to do, he's not going to be able to sell that even to his own party. Individuals who, again, are out here embracing Confederate heritage, individuals who don't want to see bases named for Confederate leaders changed. I just don't believe that this is something that could be delivered. So, yeah, it sounds good, but I think it's a slogan very similar to 40 acres and a mule. And to be fair, I don't think that on the reverse, on a show that I was on earlier today, and we were talking about the issue of reparations, I don't believe that a Biden administration would be able to deliver on reparations either. I think it's an idea that has a lot of teeth, but it's not going to happen, not because there might not be a desire, but because there are a lot of white folks in this country who could not care less about slavery. They don't care about Jim Crow. They don't care what your ancestors and my ancestors went through. And they don't believe that they are responsible in any way, shape, or form in ameliorating the conditions that many of us find ourselves in.
Well, they even addressed the issue in the Emmy Award-winning show Watchmen. And President Robert Redford, who, if you're familiar with the comic books, followed President Nixon, who served, I think, 4 terms. They rescinded in the comic book. So Nixon was just running things forever. And when Robert Redford took over, he passed reparations. And they had this whole thing where you could go in and get your genes tested and it would tell you whether or not you were eligible. And they called them Redfordations. And it indeed caused a major upset in white people. There were a whole colonies really of white folks who were banding together around the notion of hating Redfordations. And of course, the 7th Cavalry came to prominence as an underground neo-Klan organization, basically, partially in response to the Redfordations issue. So reparations is a lovely talking point, but if the Senate could not even muster the institutional will to get another round of $1,200 checks to everybody, anybody who thinks they're going to be cutting you checks for several $1 million or some $14 trillion to be divvied up amongst the Black people, you are really, really, really fooling yourself, because that is not going to happen. But while we are on the topic of Watchmen, several Emmys went to that show, which was great. Regina King is just in her season. She is racking up win after win after win, doing very well. Her on-screen husband and, spoiler alert, Dr. Manhattan, also ended up with an Emmy. Ron Cephas Jones from This Is Us got an Emmy. His daughter got an Emmy for the Quibi show Free Ray Sean. I don't know if you've watched that, but Free Ray Sean is one of the Quibi programs. They are shot in 8-minute segments. It's easy to get through. Free Ray Sean is a very poignant show about basically anti-black state-sponsored violence. And it is a tough watch, but Lawrence Fishburne does his best to give us a real New Orleans accent, as do a couple of other folks, some more successfully than others. But it is worth watching, not the least of which just to see some of the amazing things that are happening for our people. It was Emmy So Black, for real. And I am still enthralled by Lovecraft Country. The episode took us in a different place, took us to Korea to look at some of Tick's wartime experiences. And we are not doing spoilers for Lovecraft Country, but you really should be watching Lovecraft Country. You absolutely should be watching Lovecraft Country. And additionally, on the entertainment side of things, because we've had a whole lot of heavy stuff, I'm kind of decompressing, stretching my neck. It looks like Sam Jackson has been confirmed for a Nick Fury series on Disney+. So he's going to be joining the rest of the Marvel Universe, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, some animated stuff. And he will be headlining his own show. And of course, he had made a couple of cameo appearances on Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it seems like this is just a Nick Fury show, but I wouldn't be surprised to see if maybe some of those Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., now that that regular television run has ended, might end up on his show. But I'd like to move on to something that personally tickled me a lot. Tucker Carlson was in court dealing with a defamation lawsuit from Miss McDougal, who was the Playboy centerfold who is accusing Trump of the affair. And Tucker was taking it upon himself to defame her and make all these claims that she was holding him hostage and this, that, and the third. And he did prevail in the case, but he prevailed for a very interesting reason. I'm going to read to you what the what the judge said. She said that the Carlson's invocation of extortion against Ms. McDougal is non-actionable hyperbole intended to frame the debate in the guest commentator segment that followed Carlson's soliloquy. This general tenor of the show should then inform a viewer that he is not stating actual facts about the topics he discussed, and instead is engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary. Given Mr. Carlson's reputation, any reasonable viewer arrives with an appropriate amount of skepticism. So basically,
wow.
Tucker, you are full of it. You are so full of it that a judge is protecting the copious amounts of feces that occupy that thin shell of a personage that is barely held together by your skin. And that's what the judicial system thinks of you. You're not a commentator. You're not the person who created the Daily Caller. You have no intellectual integrity. You are not a person who is credible in any space. You are supposed to be pure entertainment. And anybody who comes to your show should understand that you're not saying anything of actual worth. And therefore, that's why you are protected from defaming people, because you're a clown. Does anybody else get a smile in their heart from hearing Joy? I see your beautifully structured teeth. Take it away.
Yeah, you know, like there's really nothing I can add to that. There's no reason for anybody to take you seriously because you are a clown. Yeah, I could not have said it better myself. And I love the way that she handled it.
All right, literally sipping tea in the biggest mug. That's a two-hander. That is incredible. One of the things I'd like to close the show on, and I don't know if this is even entirely appropriate to close the show on, but I'm going to give everybody a chance to go around and say what they want to say. But something came across my page today that absolutely stunned me. And I verified it, because I had to verify it, because it struck me as so ridiculous that it couldn't possibly be true. But a person with a lot of names, I'm going to go through most of them: Jermaine, Umar, Johnson, Abdullah, Shoemake, Ifatunde, stylized as Dr. Umar, has an OnlyFans page. Now, Mr. Man has been trying to raise money for a school for long enough that I had a child who was in middle school when his antics started, who is now a junior in high school. And he has done a lot. He was going to buy an existing college as a boarding school. That didn't happen. Then he was raising money to build a school. That didn't happen. Then he acquired a quote unquote school, wasn't paying any bills on it. And so the gas bills racked up and property tax and stuff. And so maybe he lost that school. I don't know. But then he was on his IG. I'm sorry, Joy. I'm just rattling this down because it's absolutely hilarious to me. Talking about gift cards to Red Lobster that he was getting from fans. And now he has resorted to crafting an OnlyFans page. Now, it is certainly true that OnlyFans pages are not solely for explicit content. That is absolutely true. It is also true that 99.99999% of the content is not safe for work. They've got a lock on their logo. And there are other platforms that you can use if you want to gate your content for money. Like, you could do that on WordPress if you want it. You can do it on Facebook if you want it. But this dude has an OnlyFans page, and it is actually Dr. Umar Ifatunde. So he chose one of his 17 names, not Johnson, baby, because Dr. Umar Johnson is his other URL. He didn't want to scandalize it that much. I am not going to pay. He's charging $11.11, by the way, per month to I guess get access to ashy hotepery and bad haircuts and poorly articulated arguments and shouts. Joy, will you be putting down your hard-earned cash for the not Dr. Umar OnlyFans page?
First of all, let me tell you, this is the laugh I needed. I have had a tension headache since Wednesday. And so this is helping me get rid of it. I also want you to know that I don't need to pay for it because I already have in my mind a picture of him with a pole in his living room, climbing it and swinging around upside down, you know, whilst spitting his rhetoric. You know, that's you put that in the mind. So I had to let you know what I'm already seeing. And it's hilarious. It is
There is
hilarious. You know,
there
I
is
mean,
not
hey, we
enough
can't
cocoa butter in the
uh,
world for how
cocoa
ashy this
butter,
page is going to
Crisco,
be.
bacon grease is not enough of anything. But you know what I'm thinking of? You know, we can't dog him because how many times have we supported women who are trying to put themselves through law school by dancing in the evenings? This is just the an iteration of that.
I
You
had to
know,
give
I
you
mean,
your shout out,
he's trying
Joy.
to pay for school, right? He's trying to pay for school for other people, and he's putting himself out there for it. You know,
How are you a person who is advocating for Black boys in school on an OnlyFans page when you have to go Chrome incognito even just to type up OnlyFans because you don't know what the heck is going to pop up on your screen, and you don't want people in your search history talking about, oh, I see you got OnlyFans on there. Oh no, it was Dr. Umar.
right?
That's what I was
I
looking
was
at, Dr.
learning.
Umar.
I was
Hmm.
learning.
Yeah, Chuck,
Wow.
you have any weigh in?
Hoteps are gonna hotep, man. And
Tap.
yeah, whole style hoteps. And so
You
I
put the
don't
whole in hotel.
yeah, exactly. Ho and hotep. So I have no respect for that brother. I mean, he is a clown. And you know, every now and again, like Joyce says, when I need a good laugh, I might take a gander at something he is saying. But for the most part, yeah, just say no.
You know,
Yeah, I
though,
go ahead,
he's
Joy.
got a lot of followers. He's got a lot of followers and a lot of believers. And I have to wonder how those people who follow him are going to receive this. Like, are they going to pay $11.11 to see whatever might be behind that curtain? Or are they going to, as most people would logically, assume that it is like 99% of the other OnlyFans and just ain't nobody trying to see, Umar in a thong. That don't even sound right, you know?
There's
Again,
nothing.
I got the picture. I can see it so clearly, Tom. Just
I don't
woo,
want to see that.
all the way down to the ground.
Now,
Get it, Umar.
to your point, Joy, to get that image out of my mind, I would drink bleach. And I would stand with my eyes open, looking at the sun beaming into my eye holes to burn my retinas to the extent that they could no longer put together the words Umar and thong and
Oh,
pole.
one thing I do want to mention while we're on the subject of polls and politics, if you get a chance, and I absolutely want you to look at that. If you follow me, it's on my Facebook page. The dancers in Atlanta put together a PSA. Have
Okay.
you guys seen this?
Oh, you mean the dancers?
The real dancers, the ones that
Yes.
actually have the athleticism to do pole work. They put
Right.
together a PSA called "Get Your Booty to the Poles," and it's the best thing I've seen in a minute. You know what? I'm going to send it to you so you can share. Because here's the thing. I keep seeing over and over again,
I am
town hall
dead.
with Oprah Winfrey. My sorority's doing this. Your fraternity's doing that. I got a text message from Barack Obama's bot the other day, and I absolutely signed up for that. I keep telling him I miss him. He keeps sending me like information. But anyway, they put together a PSA because sometimes you got to meet people where they're at. The
Right.
people that we need to get off the bench, like I mentioned earlier, and get in and register to vote and vote, they are not coming to Oprah's Zoom, event. They're not trying to hear Barack no more, but they might just watch that video and get your booty to the post. It's a banger. It's catchy. The girls are gorgeous, and they stop halfway through like, what you mean you ain't gonna vote? It's brilliant. Brilliant. 2 thumbs up, 5 stars. It's the best PSA I've seen in a decade. Everybody should watch it and share it widely.
Well, all I know is that they are targeting the exactly proper constituency because it's some of these brothers talking the most trash about what Trump is doing. And if their favorite girl is on there, note to Biden's campaign, I'm not suggesting that you do this, but if you like stamped a Joe Biden stamp on a bunch of singles and distributed them at the clubs, then they could be chipping them out. And the girls, like, it could be like a twofer. Like if you get a Joe Biden dollar, you can change that in for $2 later and just make it happen. And as a matter of fact, since most voting takes place before 7 p.m., just going ahead and turn your club into a polling place. And then you can have the ladies, because they're not working, once that lunch shift comes through, they got some downtime, they can be poll watchers, and they can, they've got the experience. They're always around the polls. So just make it happen.
A whole new type of poll worker.
It's a win-win.
They're already going to turn all the stadiums, according to the NBA, they're going to turn all the stadiums into polling places anyway, right?
Well,
champagne room in the stadium.
Blam.
That's all you need. Boom.
Biden. We're just saying. It's just 3 black people on a show giving you some good advice. Scrippers and stadiums.
Outside the box.
That's the answer. Scrippers and stadiums. Get on it.
Bans for Biden.
Not the bans for Biden. Glad.
Misspent youth here.
Well, this is well, I mean, we won't even get into the failed attempt to try to what they were trying to shut down Magic City in Atlanta. So get it all together, man. We have many miles to go before we sleep. We have heard calls for Steel Sharpen Steel after dark. We are definitely going to be getting closer to that. And we will be doing on election night door-to-door coverage from the first closings of the polls on the East Coast all the way until the final closings on the West Coast to see if we do have a dispositive election on November 3rd. And of course, we will be with you every week up until then to make sure that you are getting your dose of news unfiltered through the perspective of the Steel Sharpen Steel team. And with that, I am Tom Cunningham.
And I am Chuck Hobbs.
And I am Joy Stevens.
And we are Steel Sharpens Steel.